All right, hello everybody. This is the second class of the Freeman Design Institute. Recording's a little different for the opening. We had a bit of a technical snafu. The opening of the class didn't get recorded, so I'm jumping in and recording this for you guys again because I want to make sure all of it is captured. All right, let's carry on. So, class year 2, Fundamentals of Fun and Demographics. So, whole bunch of class updates. You guys all really kicked ass during that first class. Everyone's been super impressed. We are working on doing some pretty aggressive expansion for what we're going to be doing over here at FDI, and I'll be detailing that. But we got the Paladin Student Helper Program, Discord updates, FDI Live will be happening hopefully November 16th. We're going to see about that date. We're launching FDI Design Lab, albeit the Alberta Game Series, and we've got even more. So the Paladin Student Helper Program. This used to be the Raksha Student Helper Program. Based on just discussions and community feedback, we retitled it the Paladin Student Helper Program. Your duties as a Paladin are going to be, for those of you who want to be a Paladin, of course, to assist students who need help. If they fall down, you're there to pick them back up. To provide design feedback on assignments, ensure the community is healthy and welcoming. I want to be clear here. It's a creative community. Part of that being a healthy community is that, you know what, we're going to have some tension. We're going to have some conflict. It's fine. Being spirited, being passionate is part of the process. We don't want this to be where people are being openly attacked or other destructive behaviors, which I know you guys aren't going to do. But of course, getting some spirited discussions and perhaps passions being elevated, that's fine. That's all part of the process. As they say, don't make it personal, don't take it personal. Last thing is for Paladins, or please hold administration, that's a tough word, administration accountable. Let me know if I'm not pulling the weight, or if there's a ball I've dropped or something. You let me know. Be a pain in my ass. I will absolutely appreciate it. Applications are open. We got about 60 Paladins so far. We're still looking for some more. So if you'd like to join, please sign up. The link is in your student information package. Next up, Discord. Our Discord community has been fantastic. You guys have been incredibly supportive and setting a wonderful precedent for the community as a whole. We have a bunch of really engaged people there. What we want to do, though, is we want to take this further. So we're going to be redoing a lot of components of the Discord community. That will be happening this week. We'll be revamping Discord. We'll be better integrating our Paladin student helpers. Updates are coming soon. Our general approach, though, is we're calling it work away from work. We want this to be a professional environment to really help you further your careers and build professional skills. I'm guessing that's why you guys are here as part of the class, to help build your design skills and your design career. So we want the Discord to be an extension of that. More so that than just like a place you hang out and chat about games. This is a place about building professional skills. Lots of other Discord communities out there for chatting about games. So we'll have social aspects as well. Moving on, we've got FDI Live. So we want to get as many students as we can together and in the same room on a live class. So we're looking at November 16th for the date for that. That's going to be here in Edmonton. Right now we're talking to various venues. We haven't locked one down yet, but we've got one that's very close. It's an excellent venue as well. So we'll be meeting up IRL, and we're going to be broadcasting. So it'll be for everyone else who can't join us, same day, same time. For those of you who can join us, we're just going to be able to meet face to face, which is super exciting. We're still finalizing the details, but we're looking at there's going to be food, music. We're going to try to get some studio tours with local partners, potentially have some prizes there as well. Should be a very good time. We really want to make this something amazing. All right, there's even more. So many of you guys have amazing projects you're working on, and I really wanted to help facilitate their growth and continuing development as designers. So we're starting the FDI Design Lab. So this is a platform to help you refine, discuss, and develop your designs. More details will be coming soon. This is going to be focused very much on our Discord community. Just it's already got the structure. It's where a lot of the communication's happening. So please come join us on Discord. There's so much exciting things happening there, including FDI Design Lab, which will probably be rolling out either this week or the next. Let's make the most amazing designs possible. And design works really well as a communal effort. So let's all get in this together. Last update, Alberta Game Series. That is October 3rd and 4th, I believe. We're very close to that. I'll be in attendance there. So if you're at Alberta Game Series or you're in Calgary, it'd be great to meet you. Our very first FDI student is there. Joined us when we started this program all the way 10 months ago with our very first class, our 4-month game professional class. So that's our very first student. And since then, he has made a game, he's launched a studio, and now he's being featured at Alberta Game Series. So I'm going to be there to help encourage him. That's Michael Chokash, and his game is The Broken Ceiling. So very excited to see that. So of course, if you're at Alberta Game Series or in Calgary, come say hi. And there's even more to come. We got more stuff that we're working on, and there'll be more updates coming soon. But first, I want to give you guys a congratulations. A lot of you guys did the homework, and that was some tough homework, really focused on building some really important cognitive and professional skills. This autobiographical assignment and the event where you guys go out, help someone. Holy crap, we had hundreds of people going out and helping each other and just kind of building those empathy muscles that are so critical to design and so critical to so many professional skills. But good news, because now that you've done all that work, done all that heavy lifting, you got a lot of benefit of the program already. You've built a lot of really important cognitive skills. So if maybe you're busy, maybe you don't want to partake in the class anymore. If so, that's fine. That's fine. You don't have to be here. I know you got a lot to do. We got some cool stuff that's gonna be happening in the class, but maybe that's not your kind of thing. So I'm just gonna, I'll let you think about it. I'm gonna go make myself a sandwich. I'll be right back. All right, if you're still here, I'm guessing we want to make this the thing. So let's go. Let's get to work, guys. We're going to jump into our lecture today about fun. I hear that's pretty important for video games. So let's dig into that a little bit. Now, start by defining fun. Perhaps a little stodgy, but still a good place to understand what we're talking about here. Favorite definition of fun is an experience of hedonic engagement combined with a sense of liberation. Pretty good. And like fun with video games, I know some people will say, well, my game's not fun. It's meaningful or it's engaging. It's like, well, a lot of those are very close to fun. You want to have an experience people are enjoying and they come back to, even if it is dealing with somber or difficult subject matter. You still want them to be engaging with the product, so they're coming back to it and they're recommending it, and we're just calling that fun for right now. But digging into fun a bit more. So fun is not constructed, it is nurtured. A lot of designers and developers are like, you know what? If we do this, it will make fun. Or there's a formula for fun. There really isn't. Think of fun as being like a secondary overall result from playing a game. It's a very hard thing to specifically pursue, but you can nurture its development and its emergence. So that's the thing. When you're thinking about fun, don't think of building the fun itself. Think of creating the structure from which fun will emerge. Fortunately, though, that generally comes from a play structure, and we've got a lot more understanding about how to structure play than we do fun. Not all play is fun, but fun emerges from effective play. So we're going to focus on what is the structure of play. So, same structure of play. So unlike fun, which is more experiential and a little based on your perspective and personal experience, play has a much more understood structure. And it's a hierarchical structure, so you got to start at the first one. Each layer builds on the previous layer. First one's objective. What are they doing? Second one's a structure. It is how are they doing it? What are the rules? Third is agency. Allow people to engage in a solution, being as creative as possible within the rules of the structure. And the last one is clarity. Make it clear what people are doing, what the progress is, what the status of the game is. A lot of games really suffer from a lack of clarity. You'd be amazed at the number of games that would be a lot more fun if they just focused on improving the clarity a bit more. It's really easy to do. So let's dive into these a little bit more. First one is objective. So this is what players will be attempting to achieve while within the game they are playing. Fall Guys is really, really good at communicating their objective. You'll start off at a starting point. I see an obstacle course in front of me. There is a goal at the end, and I've got a whole bunch of competing players around me. It's pretty easy to figure out what this game wants me to do. I think it's also one of the reasons it's so easy to pick up and play, because you can just jump right into it and start, messing about and having fun because you know what you're trying to achieve. People don't know what they're trying to do. They spend the entire game just being kind of confused and disoriented. So next one is structure. That's the rules and limitations that a player must operate within to pursue their goal. So I know what I'm going to do, but to make it actually a game, help people play, there's going to be some kind of structure to it, some set of rules. A game where players can just do anything is not much of a game. Good example of structure being inherent into the game's design is Pac-Man. The maze is a very clear structure. I can see the dots, I can see the power pellets, I can see the ghost. The more intangible elements are also represented via the high score and player lives. I also see an indicator there of what the bonus points for the bonus fruit is I should be keeping an eye open for. While the objective of Pac-Man perhaps isn't entirely clear. I mean, am I supposed to eat all the ghosts? Am I supposed to escape from them? Am I supposed to solve the maze? No, you're eating all the power pellets. The structure is very clear. Carrying on. Third one, agency. This is a really tough one a lot of games struggle with. And that is the player's ability to use any strategy that occurs to them, provided it doesn't violate the prior structure. So within those rules, give me the agency to pursue a creative solution. So for example, if I'm playing soccer or football in the rest of the world, the rule is get the ball through the net past the opposing players with my team, and I can't touch it with my hands. There's a lot of things I can still do. I could try to hold it in my mouth. That's a really bad idea. It's not going to be very effective, but I am allowed to do that. Allow players to engage problem solving, even if it's a bad solution. I still just allow them to try it and be like, yeah, of course that didn't work. It was a bad idea. Go figure something else out. This really helps to drive player agency, and it's super important. Good example of it is Minecraft, which is really just player agency of the game. This is entirely about the players figuring out neat stuff to do in the environment and the game just getting out of their way while they're trying to do it. So this is one of the hardest things that a lot of designers struggle with, because a lot of times it's difficult to design systems that are so accommodating they allow the players to have ideal agency, but it's so important because this is really the meat and potatoes of play. Okay, at this point, we've now met up where the other recording was with all the other students. So I'm going to stop it here, and we're going to transition over. I'll see you guys in under a second.
That kind of stuff. What's your thought on the people who play games to break them? So they speedrunners is a really good example. How they managed to defeat Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild by clipping through things. How does that fit into this?
Yeah, so speedrunners are a sub-community within games. It's like people who collect achievements, or there's other modders, that kind of thing. Speedrunners, I think, still follow a lot of this because they're examining the structure of the game in a hyper fine level of detail and with an incredible level of scrutiny. They're trying to find, speedrunning is a type of metagame. Some games really lean into it quite strongly, but a lot of that is just kind of like an incredible focus on a lot of the overall kind of meta rules. El Nivelador.
Sam Functions asking if you could quickly summarize what objective was.
Oh, yeah, sure thing. Actually, here, let's quickly go back to objective. So, objective, what the players attempt to achieve within the game they are playing. So, you're trying to defeat all the enemies, reach the end of the maze, collect all the X, Y, or Z, finish a quest, liberate a kingdom. Those are your overall objectives. So the player goes, okay, this is what I'm doing. I know I've seen some games like the player can do whatever they want. It's like, you got to give them something to do, man, or else they'll just be sitting there being confused, being like, so what am I supposed to use? If I don't have an objective, I don't know how to use my gameplay tools. So that's the overall. So that's the objective. All right. So moving forwards, actually, it's just there we go. Last one, the third one is agency. So agency is the ability to use any strategy for the player to use any strategy that occurs to them, provided it doesn't violate the prior structure. So as I said, all these things they nest within each other. So that's pretty much just allowing the player to try things out. And reward them for like careful examination and understanding of the overall gameplay systems. Minecraft is a real masterclass in this. Like Minecraft is just agency of the game. It's like you can look at all the tools that are available to you, and you can start thinking, how can I get these tools to interact in really interesting ways? Here's there's a really interesting gameplay guidance for Minecraft, and that is tools, not rules. It is keep players focused on their ability to have agency within the world and interact with the world. Last one is clarity. So that is the state of the game and its components is as we are easily discerned by the players. Bit of a typo there. Really good example of this, Super Mario Wonder. So Super Mario Wonder, excellent game, but they spent a huge amount of time just improving the silhouetting and presentation of the player characters to help improve their clarity. Interesting thing is everyone keeps talking about how wonderful this game is to play. The actual movement mechanics have barely changed from the previous Mario game. What they did change is they just made what Mario is doing and what's happening in the world a lot more clear. They did do a small tweak to increase Mario's deceleration speed, so it's a little more responsive there. But a lot of that improved game feel is just from the improved clarity of the player character's movements and the clarity of what's going on in the environment around it. All right, so putting all this together, one of my favorite examples is looking at all this in the context of the original Super Mario Brothers, looking at it from the perspective of the objective. It has the players, pretty much it's just got the players moving from left to right. They do this with to apply this with the negative space of the screen. You have the player positioned on the left side of the screen. They're facing towards the right. There's a lot of negative space in the right that draws the player forward. Really, your goal in Mario Brothers is just moving left to right. Then within the structure, we have a lot of gameplay information given on the screen here, and there's clearly elements for me to interact with that are different from each other. So we have our enemies, we have our floor, we have our blocks. It's pretty simple, but at least that structure is quite clear. Then there is the agency within that limited structure. Like the Super Mario Brothers very rarely takes player control away from the player unless there's a major scene transition, then they will, or the player dies, then of course you don't have control during the death animation. But overall, like with a lot of Nintendo games, they really try to focus on giving the player as much agency and control as possible. With 1-bit pixel games, does clarity really matter? That is an excellent question. So I think within a 1-bit pixel game, clarity absolutely matters. Like there's a project I'm kind of been designing lately about just a series of games where you just control a single pixel, and about different ways of having clarity with that, and communicating gameplay and different ways of exploring that whole entire concept. There's a lot of neat things you can do there. All right, El Nivelador.
Just a question from Duo thus, how story factors into play.
Oh,
Narrative.
objective. That's it. That's your objective. Story helps to give gameplay rules a narrative and emotional grounding. And we'll be getting into that a little bit later on as well.
And homemade movies asked if you could give an example of clarity beyond visual
Yeah.
elements.
Absolutely. So clarity is how easy it is to understand the visual information on the screen. It's an interesting thing. You actually saw a big problem with this in, what would it be, the Xbox 360, PS3 generation of consoles, where everything was like, they're going towards very photorealistic graphics, and then they realized players had no idea what was important and wasn't important. Like, I'm looking at a bank of computer consoles, and I can only interact with one of them. It's like, well, which one can I interact with? So a lot of those games would have like instinct vision or detective vision, and all it was just a visual layer that would say you can press that button, but not that other button over there that looks very similar and like you should be able to interact with it.
Mario was released today. Do you think it would be successful from Alder?
That's an interesting hypothetical. Overall, I like one of the things you have to understand. If Mario was released today, would it still be successful? I would say probably not, because Mario's it's an old game, and it hasn't necessarily, not all elements of it aged as well as they could have. Still a very good game, but I think if you were to just directly compare it against, if everything else in the market was the same, just the Mario franchise wasn't there, but like you still have Astrobot and all those other games that are clearly derived from Mario, and the Super Mario from the NES just suddenly showed up, it probably wouldn't stand out. But that also, a lot of the modern gaming landscape is inspired by the excellent design work that went into that first Super Mario game. So it's kind of it's a difficult one to evaluate because Mario has been so instrumental in the current success of games. All right, I've got Stanislav.
Yeah, I have a question regarding if you were to start a new gameplay concept, right? Like, which part would you start with during the design process? Like, would it usually be objective or structure of play or anything else?
Oh, I would start with the objective. What's the player going to be doing in this game? And that can be high level, or it can be like low level mechanical. If you have an idea of what the player is doing, if you're trying to think of a mechanic without the mechanics having a goal, that will be an intensely difficult design challenge. Ben.
Can you hear me, Matt?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. I just want to add that Masahiro Sakurai has a great video about this. He's very sensitive of how much time is spent with the player not being in control, and he acknowledges that's a pretty big issue in RPGs.
Oh yeah, that's the number of times I'm like playing a game, like, all right, man, can't wait to do. Oh, okay, so you don't want me to play, so I'm just gonna sit here and wait while you play amateur filmmaker for a little while. Half an hour later, you're like, all right, can I please play the game I purchased? If you'd let me do that, that'd be great. How can we improve design and environment level? It's a wide topic. So Carsol, about improving overall environmental and level design. I think having a clear visual language, like this is actually, just want to quickly go back here. This is one of the things they did with the Mario games, quite not recent, but something we learned quite quickly. If you go forward, you'll notice the background elements look like they could potentially be foreground elements. Then I think after about Super Mario World, they started to desaturate the background to help set it apart, to make it very clear. That is something you're looking at but not interacting with. And generally, like, you'll see this in open world design's has some really interesting improvements lately, where they're making the elements and interactive components and objectives of the world of the game really pop out of the environment instead of looking like they are just organically there. It's like if there's a haunted forest, it is clearly a haunted forest, and there's all sorts of color communication and visual design language that goes in that communicates to the player. I can interact with this. That is something of interest to me. Oh, yes, example there about parallax scrolling. Another important thing. All right. So moving forward, putting this all into use. How do we actually apply this? Another call it in the chat about the effectiveness of Disco Elysium and their outline system in communicating gameplay information. That's another excellent way to approach it. Just a colored outline or like a shader or just a glint. I know it's like everyone's been sort of complaining about like all the white and yellow paint that's showing up in a lot of AAA games right now for climbable surfaces. It's like you've got to know that that surface is climbable. Perhaps the white and yellow paint is a bit of a lazy solution, but it's so much better than no solution. All right, so how do you actually use this within game development? So generally, this is to answer, I think it was Stanislav, your question. So when you're developing a game, start with your objective. From there, you want to build your structure. Your structure, you want to think about your agency. And then lastly, you want to focus on your clarity. That's generally how you want to develop it. But if you've put that all together and it's players not having fun for some reason, they aren't properly engaging in play when you debug it, go in the opposite order. If you put something together and it's not working, don't just scrap it and assume it's a bad idea. Start by looking at your clarity. Is it clear what's going on with the player? Like adding in hit indicators or clear sound effects, additional stats, all that stuff. I know it's not like photorealistic or it might look gamey, but remember, that's the experienced players have told you they want. They're sitting down in front of their game system to play a game, quite literally. So like if it's gamey, that's generally okay. And it's so much better to like, so many design problems can be fixed by just improving your clarity than by just trying to scrap it and just try a totally different idea. And it's generally, this stuff's really easy to do as well. Like refinements to sound effects, a little bit of camera shake, hit indicators, objective markers, colored outlines, all that kind of stuff. Try that first very quickly and see if that helps to your gameplay start to emerge from the play. If that doesn't work, start looking at, okay, maybe the player doesn't have enough agency here. Maybe the controls aren't responsive enough. Maybe animations are taking too long. Maybe it's not entirely clear. Obviously there'll be more clarity, but like perhaps the player doesn't have enough options to engage in varied and interesting strategy within the gameplay. And then if that doesn't work, look at perhaps your structure itself is the problem, or if you're getting any results there, the issue may very well be the fundamental concept of your game. You could be like, man, I was certain a game about weighing various boxes in a warehouse was going to be fucking thrilling. Then you do it, and people are like, I'm not sure why I'm interested in weighing these boxes. Perhaps the objective itself is fundamentally flawed. Though, I do have to give a shout out to Unpacked. Man, they made a game about unpacking really interesting. So, actually, on top of that, so that's the next slide. But we've gone over a lot of stuff here. Want to get your guys' thoughts on this. Do you disagree? It's great for us to have a conversation. Let's see. Wish cleaning my house was that fun in real life. You and me both. Modern Paper Mario has a big agency issue. I love those games, but classic Paper Mario undeniably gives the player so many options for approaching battle, and it's great. Yeah, I agree. It's one of the things with like I've been on a number of projects, and agency is really hard to accommodate, and it's usually one of the first things that gets removed from a design, and it is a real fundamental mistake. And this why am I enjoying this manual labor? Is a sign of good game design. I agree with that. The gaps which attempt to gamify chores, which could help. Okay, let's see. Applying gamification while cleaning, perhaps. All right. For those of us in the video call, do you guys have any questions about this? Oh, question about clarifying agency. Michael?
So not specifically my question, but one of the people in chat was wondering if you could go into a little bit more depth on exactly what agency is. I mean, I could describe it, but you're in charge.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so to clarify agency, excellent question, by the way. So think of agency as my ability as a player to use the rules of the game in creative and interesting ways. So as a player, I should be able to look at like an environment in Minecraft or layout of a puzzle, and to understand the rules, have a good sense of how I can approach this in a perhaps non-standard or unexpected way and allow the game to respect that. Like, one of the, it's a small detail, but it's an important one. A lot of games will give you what looks like the illusion of a wide open world, and then they'll put invisible walls everywhere. But what happens there is you get this really negative kind of feedback loop as a player, because you're like, oh man, big adventure, I can't wait to explore. Let me hop over this log. Oh wait, my kick-ass warrior can't make it over this log, or make it over that small rock over there, or walk up this hill because it's slightly too steep. And as a result, the player's like, okay, so clearly, if I'm trying to actively engage with this game and try interesting things with it, the game keeps telling me no, so I'll just become passive and just wait for the game to tell me what it wants me to do. And that's a disengaged player, and they're going to be having less fun, and that like the play suffers and the fun suffers as a result. Sometimes like you just, I would say if it's perhaps a little forced or a little less realistic, but you're going to help to clarify what the player's agency is, I would absolutely go for it. Like, even something like Devil May Cry, which gets very gamey, where you enter a room and then like magical spider webs just show up over blocking all the entrances and exits. It's like, yeah, it's forced, it's gamey, but at least now I know why I can't go through those doors. All right. Would you say the difference between agency and freedom in a game? I'd say it's a subtle difference, but they're very, very closely related. Like you could easily describe agency as a sense of freedom.
Miss Majory asks, how do you integrate agency?
Oh, how do you integrate agency in a game? Excellent question. I think a lot of that is on the pure design side. Just sit there, look at the game, and think, as a player, what if I try this? What if I try that? And is that a reasonable thing for the player to try? Like, if something is, if I'm in a physics-based game and something's on fire next to something that's, a body of water, I should be able to put the thing on fire in the body of water, have the fire go out. Don't just keep like teleporting it back or block the player from trying to do that. Another big thing as well is playtesting. Start playtesting games very early on, see what players try to do, and build the game around respecting those choices. Yes, Stanislav.
Yeah, is it also recommended to document agency like early on already, like with structure? So like what we kind of expect players to use the structure for, like to create like example strategies, or is that more like a condition?
I would say yes. Keep in mind that like defending player agency is going to be critical to having a really fun, really engaging game. Like there's a reason why Minecraft has sold so many units. There's a reason why Mario sells so many units. There's a reason why Tetris sells so many units. Tetris, I've got very limited agency, but it's agency that all makes sense. I'm not trying to move the blocks up. I know they only move down and left and right, and when it hits another block, it stops. But I've got agency within those rule sets. Okay, Ben and then El Nivelador. Ben.
Do you think that making games systemic, which is to say furnishing them with a bunch of systems, directly correlates positively with
Yes.
agency? Because I'm
Yes,
thinking of a game
absolutely,
like
dude.
Disgaea.
Sorry, just to jump in here. Yeah, systems-driven design is so powerful and so effective. I watched a talk with Rami Ismail from Vlambeer, and he's like, look, if you ever want to double your content, just lean into systems. Like, it's create a second quest or like modify the rules. Don't just create a bunch of additional assets and try to double the size of your game with that. Lean into your systems, and a lot of players really enjoy that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, make it. Suddenly all the enemies explode when they get defeated. Totally changes your gameplay. You've got hours of additional content now because now you're reframing all your gameplay problems with a really interesting rule. El Nivelador.
Just a couple questions from
Yes.
chat. So agency is anticipating the player's interactive expectations.
Yes.
Biggest
anticipating and respecting them.
The next one from Techromancer is, are these things that are typically adjusted during prototyping and early testing?
They can be, but honestly, you want to be keeping agency in mind from a very early phase. When you're working on your paper designs or early prototypes, be thinking, okay, what could the player be trying to do here, or what might they attempt? And I know a lot of designers are like, well, the player's not supposed to be doing that, so I'll stop it. It's like, come on, dude. If they're trying it, it's letting you know that it's something they want to do. Figure out a way of respecting that. And it's a challenge. And that's also like, it's, as I like to say, it's where we earn our pay as designers. Okay, one more question, then we're moving on. All right, anything else? Okay, I think we're good. Let's push on. This class is going to go a little late. I was a little bit too ambitious with our lesson today. Okay, so hot take here. There are no bad ideas, only bad executions. Really, I know I gave that example of like a game where you're measuring boxes in a warehouse, but honestly, when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, there's a way to make that fun. It's a challenge. It's tough, but just because a game doesn't work doesn't necessarily mean the idea is flawed. On the inverse, that also means that while certainly certain ideas can have be a bit easier to present and to adopt or adapt into gameplay than others, I would be more concerned about how we're executing on an idea than what the actual idea is itself. Like if you take Shigeru Miyamoto and, have him make a game about painting white walls different shades of white, I'm pretty sure he's going to figure out a way of making that really fun. All right, is the approach different for educational games? It is not. All good games are educational games. You're always teaching people stuff. So, to let you on a little secret, we're playing an educational game right now. A lot of what I did for this program was putting game design skills to use within education, trying to give you guys rules and structure and objectives, deadlines, try to give you guys a lot of agency in how you approach things. Notice that the previous two assignments were very light on what I actually wanted you to do. It was just about achieving an overall high-level objective. Interesting element there, and that is people will optimize towards the, most salient measurable element of an objective. So this is also one of the reasons we don't have grades here, because I don't want you guys focusing on a grade. I want you guys focusing on the quality of the product, and that's a harder thing to express beyond just a grade. All right, moving on. So we talked about fun. Let's talk about making fun for a player, because you make games for a person. So when you're designing a game, one of the first things you want to ask yourself is, who is your customer? Remember, you make games for someone else to play. We make them, someone else plays them. That's part of the deal here. But who is playing your game? Who are you making your game for? And no, you don't get to make it for yourself, because then you're only selling one copy, maybe two, if you're selling a copy to your mom as well. So knowing who you're making your game for greatly simplifies the design process, because then you'll know exactly how I want to be structuring things, exactly how I want to be approaching this. So building on top of that, we're going to dive a little bit into demographics. So demographics are generally taking populations and organizing them into, I say, cognitively useful groups. There's a lot of different ways of dividing a demographic, depending what your objectives are. How you divide that is key to how you divide your demographic. Yay for sociology. Hell yeah. All right, so for understanding demographics are grouping your customers based on key differentiating elements. They're inherently flawed, but it's an effective strategy if used properly. Demographics work with groups and not individuals. I know we sell to individuals, but we design games for groups. It's an interesting give and take. This is one of the common mistakes or misunderstandings I see with demographics, as people will look at demographics. Oh, well, I know someone that doesn't fit into that. It's like, well, yeah, because no one person fits into a specific demographic, but a demographic is a broad abstraction of a population of people.
Matt, a question
Yes.
is it possible to make a game that both me and the consumers will enjoy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I know I'm making a good game if it's something that I still enjoy playing after I've made it. But I've also worked on a lot of games I know you guys love that I am very tired of playing. My show about, like, I still can't go back and play RDR2. Great game, phenomenal, wonderful achievement. But whenever I jump into it, I'm just like, man, this is just this isn't for me. I loved working on it. I love that you guys had so much fun playing it. That is super important to me. But also, I'm like, you know what? This is just, it's not my style of game. And I'll make lots of games that aren't my style of game. I love making stuff. I love making stuff for you guys. That's why I find fun,
I feel it's the creative's curse. A lot of musicians suffer with this as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My favorite quotes is from John Carmack, who's a very successful programmer, one of the greatest programmers ever lived. He was the chief technical officer for id Software, did like Doom and Quake, and really codified a lot of early graphical technology. A lot of the graphics hardware on your PC directly references the work that was done by John Carmack. He was also the chief technology officer for Meta on the early Oculus Rift and Oculus headset. But he says he hates everything he's ever written, and he's one of the best programmers on the planet. Like, it's just, you'll know this stuff so intensely and so in depth, you will just know where all the flaws are, and you'll have that version of this that you really wanted to do. Heck, this class, like, I was working on this class for very long. There's so much stuff I wanted to include in this. I already know there's too much stuff in this. Not that I dislike the class, but I'm like, there's another version of this class that up here was so much better. But I had to actually make this a reality and get this thing done, and hopefully not spend too much of your guys' time. Yes, Masters of Doom, excellent book that was mentioned in the chat. All right. So, please understand the means of phrases like tends to or on average. That does not mean that this will absolutely apply. It's like, if you look at these groups as an abstraction across a wide range of, or a wide number, like thousands or millions, you will see behaviors that tend to emerge or on average will emerge. So again, what is true for a group is commonly not true for an individual. And again, demographics are an abstraction. So giving a bit of a parallel example, but one I thought was interesting, and that is, what is an animal that no one has ever seen but exists in every culture?
Is this a dragon?
It's a dragon. Okay, and like, every culture has a dragon or some kind of mythical serpent or something that's very similar to a dragon. And they generally have very common characteristics. Yeah, griffin. You can argue a griffin is very similar to a dragon. Like a dragon is kind of a hybrid of a predatory bird, predatory serpent, and a predatory mammal. And it's tied with deep mythological elements.
The phoenix.
Mermaids, I would say no to mermaids, because I imagine there are landlocked cultures that do not have a concept of a mermaid. Phoenix is a common one as well. So, understanding dragons. So, dragons are an abstraction of several different predatory animals. They're also combined with complex thematic and mythological structures. They generally guard treasure or knowledge or some kind of important resource. They fly, they breathe fire or electricity, or have some kind of otherworldly abilities. Yeah, actually, a great example of this is in Skyrim. You get your shouts from defeating dragons. Different gameplay abilities in Skyrim you get from defeating dragons, which is a common dragon motif. So, while dragons don't exist, they are useful to explain several individual concepts as a unified whole. They're an abstraction of several different things. By studying a dragon, I understand several predatory animals, but there is no predatory animal that is a dragon. Think of demographics as dragons. By studying them, you will not understand any specific customer, but you'll understand the abstraction of several customers. If you want, yes. For chat, if you want to be on the video call, please reach out in Discord or via email. We have an email there at the top of the screen, mattf@freemandesign.institute. Reach out there and I'll get you in on the call. So, for demographics, there's two key demographics I recommend focusing on. One, which is super important. If I'm designing a game for a customer, can anyone think of the one piece of information I want to know about that customer more than anything else? Elizabeth.
Age.
Hell yeah, it's age. Age. Okay, fantastic. I'm so glad you guys are on top of this. But yeah, I need to know, am I making it for like someone, are they a little kid? Are they a teenager? Are they in their 20s? Or they're like the 20s to 30s? Are they 50 or above? You know, that age demographic is really key. Second one, I see a couple people have gone to it already. Second very important demographic is gender. So generally you will see a lot of cultures will divide things into masculine, feminine, male, female. So if you tell me the age of someone and their gender, I can that helps to inform a lot about the design. Now, I want to provide an asterisk on gender because gender is a very interesting demographic. What type of games they like. With these two demographics, I'll have a good idea of how to approach a game for them. Now, you'll generally want to identify, how best to describe this? It is the type of game that they like there are trends that pull in one direction or the other, but generally, if I'm designing a type of game and I know these two demographics, that will let me know how to approach that type of game very effectively. Elizabeth.
With the gender demographic,
yes.
Isn't it sometimes that it could be like it's predominantly for male audiences but can still pull in female audiences?
Yeah, absolutely.
I play games that a lot of it's catered towards males, but that's just the type of things I like.
Oh, yeah, totally. One of my favorite shows is Agretsuko, which is like an anime about a 20-something female Japanese office worker. I'm not a 20-something female Japanese office worker, but I'm really interested in the daily adventures of Agretsuko and like her like making friends and like having romances and that kind of stuff. Clearly, I'm not the target demographic, but I still love it. You know?
Yeah, it's the same end with me for, I don't know, Dead Rising, Gears of War, Saints Row, and all that stuff.
Oh, totally. And this is the thing. It's like, man, like, this is why I said gender is such an interesting demographic. It's an important one, but it's so fluid and so dynamic. And gender expression is constantly being reevaluated and updated as culture changes. It's really, really fascinating. But there do tend to be some overall trends, which again, demographics, they're abstractions. El Nivelador.
Just wanted to add how the fun element isn't gender exclusive. When you make a game that is good to play, anyone will find way to enjoy it. And I also have a question from the chat. What if they want to approach both genders, for example, like Genshin does?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Generally with that, honestly, a good starting point is to be very specific on the customer you're designing for, and then start to expand it out from there. But I know a lot of projects, and they'll be like, well, we're making a game for everyone. Like, well, you're making a game for no one really, because in order for your creative work to have some kind of substance, or like, what do you, like, for it to have a structure, you need to know who it's for and who it's not for. So if you make a game for everyone, you really do go and frustrate the ability to give your game a proper structure. Without a structure, players won't really know what they're in for, and then it loses a certain level of interest. I think it's really good to just commit to a group, be like, this is our game, and we're being very specific about who it's for. Now let's start expanding that out and finding a way of making this more interesting and loosening things up a little bit. But you start off with something specific and then you loosen it, as opposed to just saying we're this amorphous blob that everyone loves. You know, as I'd like to say, if you're making a game for everyone, you're making a game for no one. Okay. Oh yeah, Space Marine 2, great example of a game that knows its demographic. The same thing with like fucking Animal Crossing and stuff. Like Animal Crossing, they absolutely have women in mind for that one. But they also, like, a lot of guys love playing it as well. But like, it's Animal Crossing, I think, would be a far weaker game if they tried to put in more traditionally masculine elements to it. You know, if you're like, we want more guys playing this, we got to put in Animal Crossing combat. That's probably wouldn't be a good fit. All right, so diving into these demographics a little bit. So if you're looking at age as a demographic, as they get younger, they prefer lower emotional intensity and a greater level of abstraction. So that's the thing with kids. You look at children's cartoons, they're almost like hallucinatory and surreal in like the type of the way that they present the subject matter and the characters. Like you've got like Sesame Street, you've got a giant talking bird and a little gremlin that lives in a trash can, but they're all very soft. They're all very approachable, but they're all really abstract and weird. It's one of the great things with children's entertainment. You get to do so many bizarre ideas there, and kids are just like, oh, absolutely, that's how it works. You know? That character's from a race that constantly talks backwards. That's just how they do things. As you get older, they generally want higher emotional intensity and a greater physical presence. You're much more interested in things that have a more tangible, realistic elements to them. That mole Animal Crossing combat would be fire. Not gonna lie, gotta beef with that mole and yeah. There's a mini game where you can beat up Tom Nook. I gotta admit, I'd be tempted. All right, so matching the demographic. One of these dragons is intended for a younger demographic, one for an older demographic. Can you guess which is which? It's the thing. It's like these demographics are very well understood and very and rather deeply ingrained. So, like, you know, it's a silly question because of course it's obvious. That's why it's an important demographic divider. Left is older, right is younger. Oh, so close there. All right, then also for gender. Again, gender expression is complex and often evolving in interesting ways. There are culturally consistent elements of most gender expression. These are very fluid, and it really is a fascinating topic. But again, if we're to look at the stuff as a group and to abstract, there are certain patterns that do tend to emerge. Ben.
One example that I was thinking of, especially with gender, is that like the Fire Emblem series of strategy RPGs, like that's a genre that's like, it's like war games. Like you would consider it so nerdy, but I have a lot of, this is anecdotal, but I have a lot of female friends who really love the new Fire Emblem games because they have like all these different mechanics for interpersonal relationships and this whole persona element. And it's just like, how do they do that? Like, how do they take that such an esoteric genre and broaden that? It's so interesting.
Oh, because they're really fucking smart at what they do. Like this is this is such a fascinating topic, and I'm just going to be like super geeky here. But like one of the things, like there is looking like female expression. Ben, this is something we were discussing yesterday. But if you look at like female pop stars, which are like a kind of form of like peak alpha female billionaires, they're artistic, they're self-sufficient. A lot of them work very closely with people in the drag community, which are men imitating forms of femininity. It's like Taylor Swift's Eras tour. She has a lot of drag performers on stage with her, and that's a really common thing across a lot of pop divas. It's such an interesting and bizarre interplay. But also, like with guys, like man, a lot of guys will be like, your favorite action films are probably Aliens and Terminator. Strong female leads in there. Interestingly enough, much higher. There's a much more. Those films appeal much more to men than they do to women, despite having very strong female leads. This stuff's really intricate and complex. Chappelle Roan, yes, Chappelle Roan's fucking great. Another great example of this, I recently is everyone's familiar with Elvira, a kind of a B movie kind of screen queen, very feminine, but again, like a lot of inspiration from the drag community, and she actually dedicated a lot of her films to people from the drag community. But like hyper feminine, it's really interesting stuff. All right, yes, Aliens was amazing. Aliens is amazing. Thank you very much. So, Ben, going into what you're talking about. Generally speaking, men are interested in things and technique, be like machines and mechanics and things you measure and all that kind of stuff. Women are generally more interested in people and places. So you're saying, Ben, you're talking about Fire Emblem. It's like, yeah, they got all that wonderful characters and narrative and the sense of place and the community within that place. And that's because they know that like that's going to really appeal to, you know, the female demographic. I think they're also probably starting to drift slowly into that direction. So, you know, another example here of, you know, match the demographic. Monster trucks and murder mysteries. Like it's, again, it's one of those examples that is pretty straightforward. Okay, so should we be aiming, question with the chat, should we be aiming wide or narrow for target demographic? Aim narrow. Aim narrow and then widen it out. That specificity will really help in your creative and design process. Seen screenshots from that game, horrifying. All right, sorry, just going through this. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, this is it's monster trucks. It's large, noisy machines, and they have a very they're going to tie or match with a very specific driver who has a very specific technique. There's an art to driving a monster truck. It's subtle, and it takes a little while to understand what it is, but there is a form of mechanical performance that happens there. It generally lays very masculine. Murder mysteries, you've got a person, they're generally very tied to a person and a place. This person was murdered in this place. Let's talk to all the other people who were in that place and understand what happened. It's a very popular genre. Most of the top creators in it are women. The audience is largely women. There's this wonderful YouTube series that my wife watches called, I think it's Murders in Makeup. It's really great. It's a woman who does makeup tutorials while she's discussing like true life crime, and she'll be like putting on her mascara while like describing like. And the funny thing was, they never found the body's eyeballs for like 2 weeks. It's just all this like it's such a intensely visceral form of like storytelling combined with just like constantly putting on makeup. It's really great. Elizabeth.
I've heard that there's some women like to watch murder mysteries, not just because of that kind of thing, but also because of something to do with knowing how to protect ourselves as women who are more vulnerable to certain situations.
True. That's an interesting perspective on that. The only thing I think is generally the killer in a murder mystery is someone who evades traditional forms of defense. And like that's what makes a good murder mystery. Like, you know, that's part of the style. But that's an interesting perspective on that. All right. Ben.
I've heard a similar thing about horror games and horror media.
Oh yeah. Well, it's also like horror is such an interesting genre. Also, again, one of those genres, like, man, almost entirely female dominated. Like the final girl is a key element of horror films. There's very rarely a final guy. The only example I could think of final guys in horror is Evil Dead with the character of Ash Williams and Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And in both of those films, the male characters did not take on like a final girl or archetype. They took on more of a buffoon kind of archetype. An interesting thing, when they remade Evil Dead and gave it a female protagonist, much closer to a traditional final girl. Yep. A lot of players in Dead by Daylight that are also female. Yep, that tracks. Horror is more of application of what could happen. It plays more on the imagination with fear and excitement. Yeah, horror is a great genre. Like it does play so much in anticipation and things not even happening, which is just brilliant. And like as a creator, eventually you'll start to realize the amazing power of like, oh my god, I can get the players like really scared or really engaged, and I just have to show them literally nothing. Sign me up for that. It's fantastic. All right.
About Death Stranding types of games.
There's one question. So there's one question I want to jump into here from Boss Music Streams. What is a final girl? So thank you. I think it actually might be a kind of a Western cultural artifact there. Final girl is an archetype in horror films where generally a lot of horror films you'll have a group of people and a killer. Killer starts murdering off the group of people. This traditional format of the story is the last survivor will generally be a young woman who ultimately defeats the killer. That young woman's commonly referred to as the final girl. Okay, so a couple of descriptions there in the chat. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. All right, moving forwards. Okay, so reminder, gender expression is complex, and these are abstractions. There are a lot of women who like traditionally masculine stuff, a lot of men who like traditionally feminine stuff, and also the definition of male and female and how that overlays with masculine and feminine are very complex relationships. Again, these are abstractions. So, putting it all together. Actually, quick check with the chat. How are we doing for time overall? I know that we're past our hour mark. Does anyone have a hard stop coming up? Going once? All good for me? Nope. Okay. There we go. Great. And also, if you do have to go, we are recording. So, there's the thing. You've got your play. You've got your customer. Last thing I'm going to recommend you do is you rally this around feelings and philosophy. This is a really important creative goal and kind of North Star as you're working on something. This is what's going to make your project, your game, distinctly your game or distinctly have its own identity. So both of these genres are very popular. They're both very popular games. Very distinctive sense of the feelings they're trying to elicit and the kind of philosophies that they explore. Mario, we have enthusiasm and joy and kind of a youthful, childlike sense of wonder. And it's largely about environmental play and taking on different types of personas as you engage in that environmental play. God of War, for a while, Kratos was kind of like an angry teenager. And then they're like, wait a minute, what if we made him a dad? And that works so much better because now that aggression has a specific type of structure and he has a relationship with his son, even though the structure of the game is largely the same. Kratos going through levels and defeating large, scary monsters in brutal and violent ways. That underlying emotional core and philosophy really snapped everything into focus, giving Kratos' son gave it very clear emotional goals and a philosophical concepts for them to discuss and for the game to start to explore. Relationships between fathers and sons, histories of violence, all that kind of stuff. The sins of the father being visited upon the son, those sorts of things. Make them a dad because it's a common thing. It's true, but like, man, this is a thing where like, this is where you have to go back and make this unique. This is your game. Don't be like, hey, Kratos did it, I'm gonna do it too. It's like, well, then why don't I just go back and play God of War? Because they probably like, they already did a great job of that, and the chances of you beating God of War is a losing battle. Be your own thing. Figure out your own emotional goals and philosophy. Make Mario a dad and give him a beard. Oh my God, that would be the worst thing for Mario. Mario is kind of like an adult version of a child. He's similar to like Shazam, you know? Mario having a kid, I think, would fundamentally undermine Mario. Weirdly enough, Bowser gets to have kids, though. That's a key thing with Bowser. All right. So, actually, before we get into homework, because I know everyone loves their homework, do we have any questions or thoughts about what we just covered? Questions, comments, concerns? Going once. What about simulations? Ooh, from D with us. Good question. Why can't we get a mom simulator? Oh, there's totally mom simulators. Cooking Mama. Let me think what else. I think The Sims could be a kind of mom simulator as well.
There are newborn simulators as well.
True. But I think like there's, I know the feminine archetype is a really interesting one. Because like I'm just thinking because there's a lot of concepts of rally is generally a really good, what would be like a really interesting expression of the feminine is like a comic can be one of like an overpowering sense of like natural enforcement. Like a dragon is generally a very feminine kind of archetype. Feminine characters can be really, really interesting when put into powerful roles, but they're also very, very challenging to write because you almost have to start writing mythically. Elizabeth.
Whenever there's tend to be any feminine games, or at least the ones that I'm aware of, there's always seemed to be men that seem to be more interested in it in comparison to women. So, for example, Cooking Mama, you got Lollipop Chainsaw, which has recently got a repop, but more men are into that. But you still got some women that play that as well. So I don't know. I don't think there's ever been a game that specifically has been catered to women as a whole. You always tend to get a good balance or one over the other.
I'd say The Sims and Animal Crossing were designed with very, very much with women in mind. I'm actually working on a game right now, and our demographic is predominantly women. We've got an eye on male players as well, but like, yeah, that's our demographic. Is like, okay, we're going for women 25 to 45. That's the customer we're focusing on. But all right, writing mythically. So actually here, let's just go through here. Going through our questions here. And
Get a
so-
question from Homemade Movies. How do you implement feelings and philosophy aspect? Is it baked into play or a specific part of it?
Oh, excellent question. This is where you got to have a subtle touch. There isn't a established formula for this. This is where you got to sit there and think, okay, my game is exploring a sense of loss and isolation. How would I show that mechanically? And then as you think about that, it's really great because once you start down that path, innovation just starts to emerge. You start to realize, oh wait, if I want to have loss and isolation in my navigation, it really has to work like this. I have to take these kinds of elements or these kind of steps. This is where you're just gonna, put on your creativity hat and just kind of, go for some long walks and think this over about, okay, how would I actually embrace this kind of philosophy or emotional goals in the game? So there's a question here about writing mythically. When I refer to that, it's generally saying that if you're exploring concepts that don't have a clear physical or real world analogy, you start to write in phrases that are bigger than reality. Like that's, Lord of the Rings. There's never going to be a conflict like that. There never has been a conflict like that. It's bigger than any known conflict. It's a mythical conflict. The Hindu religious stories as well, with like gods throwing mountains at each other and that kind of stuff. Again, doesn't actually happen, but you're talking about things that are mythological. So it's this grand, epic, sweeping structure. Warhammer deals with a lot of interesting mythological storytelling as well. All right, Stanislav.
Yeah, I think that I just wanted to ask. I think that this philosophy and feeling also really ties to the game pillars, right? Like
Yes.
at
Yeah.
least like when
Yeah.
a lot of designers, like I read I read a book about, I think it was called Draw of a Great Game Designer, where basically they define that pillars usually outline the core fantasy, the feelings that the game should transmit, and the world that the setting basically.
Excellent point there. I would be so the thing with core pillars. I want to throw a couple of important qualifiers there. With core pillars, be careful that they're not like features. Like our core pillar is 8-player multiplayer. It's better if your core player is like socializing with my friends. To do that, we have 8-player multiplayer. But maybe we have 6-player, maybe we have 4-player. It depends on exactly how you want to express that overall emotional goal. There's one other element I forgot I was going to mention, but I totally blanked on that. El Nivelador.
Just a couple questions from chat here. Shadow TV, is the philosophy of feelings only narrative something you can develop after the core mechanics or gameplay alongside it?
No. Develop it as a core part of this. Like with Mario and God of War, they knew the kind of game that they were making, the kind of feelings that they were trying to elicit in the player. You mean like in Legend of Zelda, Shigeru Miyamoto, when he made it, he wanted that sense of exploration he had as a child going through the woods. You've got the idea about around every corner there's going to be some new mystery or interesting thing to explore or puzzle to solve. It's really important. It's very hard to graft this stuff after the fact. And also, if you don't know what your emotional and philosophical core are, all of your mechanics will feel disparate and separate from each other. El Nivelador, you said there's another question?
Another question, yes, from Creator. Any examples of how more gender-neutral aspects in games relate to different aspects of play structures?
Oh, let's see. Gender-neutral aspects of games and play structure. That's a really good question. There is... Let me think. There is an approach to demographics where you can... What would it be? Because I've been thinking about this a lot, is that you can have a character that embodies both masculine and feminine, or eschews both masculine and feminine, as being kind of a This is an excellent question, and it's one I've been pondering a lot myself. within that, like, okay, actually, like a mechanic that does not have a particular masculine or feminine element would probably be something that's rather inert, like a menu system or other very simple, very would it be like it's like not nuance, but like a simple minimalist kind of structure. Even if you are just within simple gameplay mechanics, they can tend to start to gravitate towards masculine or feminine. Am I controlling an agent, or am I more interested in my environment? Is it about my agent and the use of tools, or is it about my agent and the relationship with other agents? Are we about mastery? Are we about, like groups and environment and culture? It's very hard to work on a game that doesn't start to pull in these kinds of elements, or in a mechanic that doesn't start to pull in these kind of mechanic elements. Elizabeth.
So when you are looking at demographics, you look at it for your primary target audience. Would you say it's also possibly necessary to look at your secondary audience as a possibility?
Oh yeah. I think, but you start with your primary. It's like I said,
Yeah.
the game that we're working on right now. It's like we know it's going to be about women age 25 to 45, that kind of range. But I've also got an eye on like, okay, how are we going to do? Like we probably aren't going to go younger. We might go older, but we also know we got an interest in making this game accessible for men as well. But they are our secondary audience. We're focusing on women first.
Okay.
So understand your overall priority there and make sure that it makes sense for your game. All right. Let's carry on. All right, we're at 11.
Ben has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Ben.
I was gonna say, I think the way to do it would be like both and neither. So you combine both masculine and feminine elements, and then it just becomes kind of more gender neutral. Like I was saying in Fire Emblem, or I don't know. I think about like I was thinking about like Undertale for some reason, like in Deltarune, how the protagonist is gender neutral, and also the game, I think has weirdly like a broad appeal because it has depth, but it also has like emotional weight. I don't know.
Yeah, this is tricky because like you can't. I think like generally something that is like gender neutral. I'd be thinking about something along the lines of something like Tetris, that is like intrinsically gender neutral. I think regarding yeah, you can also have like characters that are gender neutral as well. Like a lot of early mascot platformers are generally like they can have a gender, but it's usually like a really minimal kind of element to them. Like, what gender are the Bubble dragons? They could be men, they could be women. I don't think it's really all that important for like the identity of themselves as characters there. All right. Also, the problem you can run into is you can find that if you are going with something that's too neutral, you can just wind up. It's like, I don't want to have it be black or white. Let's go with the shade of gray, and that shade of gray can like make sure you're using that shade of gray effectively and not just going for a shade of gray. Like it's got to have all creative decisions have to be informed and pursuing an objective. Otherwise, you'll find they tend to land a little flat. Yeah, generic for the effort of making them neutral. All right. Let's carry on. So for homework this week, you are going to design a game for an assigned demographic. So each one of you guys, we have a document where we took all your names and we assigned you to a random player and platform and genre. So for assigned demographic, genre, and platform, usually provide yes, we have a provided design document format that we'll be using as well. So a couple of documents we'll be sending your way. So in the folder for this week's class, you will find a lengthy Excel spreadsheet that has everyone's first name and last initial. You will then see an assigned game project customer profile. You'll get an age, a gender, a genre, and a platform. So these are all key things to keep in mind while you're designing a game. This was all randomized because, again, we've got over 1,000 students here. So doing that bespoke for each one will work. Some of you guys are going to have very easy to work with combinations, which I'd say just gives you different design challenges, because now you got to, these are generally well-worn projects. You got to find out a way of making this unique and more interesting. Some of you are going to have some really interesting head scratchers of a demographic assignment. But that also represents the kind of work you do in the industry, where sometimes you're just going to find a project like, I'm not sure that I entirely understand how to make this work. You got to roll up your sleeves and figure it out. So we got a couple more questions here.
Asking if through the course they will be talking about publishers or to publishers.
Oh, yes. We will be incorporating an element of working with publishers into the program as well. And that'll be arriving in the coming weeks. Oh, the spreadsheet is, so go to your student resources document. There's a link there to the class folders on Google Drive. This spreadsheet is in the folder for this week. Thank you very much for those who shared it.
I like mine already.
What is yours, Elizabeth?
Mine is a 35 to 50 age range, female, rhythm, and PC.
Oh, yeah.
I'm good with that.
That's a pretty slam dunk. That's a pretty good one. All right. So what you're going to do for this week is you're going to write 2 paragraphs. First paragraph, detail what the player will do in the game. So keep in mind, what is the structure of play, and keep your demographic in mind. Second paragraph, I want you to detail the emotional goals and philosophy of your game. What are the ideas you want to explore in the game? What are the concepts? Those are going to be important rallying points for your overall design. You're going to be working with this game for the rest of the program. So much like you do in the industry, you're going to assign something, and this is what you're going to be working on, what you'll be designing with. You're going to learn to love this game. This is your game. Jilly Avil, oh God, mine is so freaking hard. Well, good. That's just that's gonna make you a better designer. Challenge is what's gonna help to really build those skills. You're gonna have such good stories to tell during interviews about the impossible design challenge you had to work through. And employers are gonna respect that. So to start, before you start writing those paragraphs, do ideation. Sit down and just sticky notes or a whiteboard or a notebook or whatever you need to generate ideas. Just get the ideas flowing and realize you're going to throw out most of the stuff. Once you feel like you've reached when it feels creatively complete, look at it, lock it down to those 2 paragraphs and express what the design is. Just a quick question. Do we need to consider scope for this project, or should we consider infinite time and budgets? Oh, that is an excellent question, David Rummer. With this, I'm going to say, think of the scope as 1 year and a team of 10 people. I'll make that more explicit in the actual assignment itself. That's an excellent point. That's a really important thing to keep in mind while you're working on these kinds of things. And, honestly, if you want to go smaller with scope, that's fine, but try not to go bigger.
Matt, a couple questions here. Some members in chat are saying submission form does not have input for the homework.
Oh, okay. I'll fix that. Sorry, that's a error on my part there. Sorry.
Another one is, can we leave our ideation and research in the document we submit?
I would say keep it separate. In that document, I just want to see the 2 paragraphs. The ideation, honestly, ideation should be messy. It should be something when only you can read it. That's fine. It just means you weren't worrying about formatting. You're just getting things working creatively. You then rally that, crunch it down to a couple of paragraphs.
Perfect. And the last one is, what other variations of play structure can we use?
That's a good question. So regarding variations of play structure, I would strongly recommend you use the one that we discussed in the class, simply because I found that one to be so effective. If there's another approach you want to try, that's fine. But again, I'm going to leave this ball in your court, but I would recommend with the one that we use because it is, tried and proven, tried and tested. That's it.
Can
Okay.
they include diagrams?
No, don't include diagrams yet. I want to see you express this just with 2 paragraphs. Okay,
Bueno.
anything else? What the hell is a casino game? Oh, think of it as like a gambling game, slot machines, cards, those kinds of things. Some of the genres are specific, some of them are vague. I'm leaving this up to you to interpret it how you'd like. Can I make El Nivelador a character in my game? El Nivelador.
Absolutely.
Okay, there we go. You got permission.
Sorry to interrupt, but my
remember
question
though,
also...
El Nivelador is a champion of the week. Don't compromise the El Nivelador zeitgeist, or else we don't want to upset our class defender. El Nivelador's time is very valuable. We're really lucky to have him. Let's not upset him, but please include him in your games if you like. Wait, when is this part of a game due? By Creator 438. Sorry, I'm not sure. Oh yeah, sorry. The assignment's due for next week. I hate mobile puzzle games. Please help. You got to work with the mobile puzzle game you've been assigned. That's part of the job. If you're working for a company, they'll absolutely come to you and say, hey, so like, you know that genre you make? What about it as a terrible gotcha game? That's what we've been funded with. That's what you got to make. You got to make that gotcha game. You got to figure out how to make it a good gotcha game. There's always a way. It's part of the challenge. Okay. Little Mind Survival Mobile for the Elderly. Oh, that's going to be a fun one. That's going to be great. That's going to be a lot of fun. All right. Oh, so Vigil saying got cut off about how to assign the project specifications. In the folder for today's class, there's a large spreadsheet with everyone's assignment on it. Okay. All right, that's it there. And do we have any final questions?
Any sort of case studies or challenges you faced when you worked on AAA games?
Oh, biggest challenge I've seen with AAA games, and we're addressing it here, and that is lack of clear direction. So many projects start off and they don't know what game they're making. They know the measurements of the game, 20 hours of gameplay, third-person combat, 5 different levels across 6 environments, 18 weapons. But okay, but like, what's the experience we're making? Because then we can start to get a really clear idea of like, why do we need this many weapons or this many features? And it starts to become like that experiential, that emotional and philosophical goals will become the most powerful tool as you design a game. It becomes an effective filter to let you know what your game is and what your game isn't. And projects I've been on where we've properly established that, they come into shape so quickly. And a lot of it is just us being like, oh yeah, that's a cool idea from this game over here, but it's not part of our game. So we're not implementing that because it's not part of our game. Maybe we'll take some inspiration from it. Maybe we'll reinterpret it, but we're not doing their version of it because that was the version for their game. That isn't our game. Yeah. BioWare called this out recently as a compound. It's an epidemic in the industry. I've been on a lot of projects where like, there's one game I was on where like the creative vision for player input was they want it to be intuitive and not frustrating. So I was like, okay, so you want our controls to be good and not bad. That's an amazing vision setting there. It's like, yeah, of course we want it to be good and not bad, but like, can we get some more specificity on what control should actually be? It's like we're opening a restaurant. We want the food to be delicious. And, okay. Are we expected to have a fully functional game by the end of this course? No. We are just designing a game on paper. Again, this is the thing with just kind of we've only got 10 weeks. And again, we've got about 1,000 students here. If all you guys were making interactive games, this class would not happen, unfortunately. Now, if you want to take the game you're working on, prototype in your own time, that is phenomenal. Please do that. That will not be a part of the official course evaluation, though. We are just doing this on paper. That's how this program works. We want to make the world's first good video game. Yes, yes. Remember, 93% of the world do not have a dedicated gaming device. Honestly, toasting bread is more popular than video games. It's just everyone's got, like, most households have a dedicated device for toasting bread. Far fewer have a dedicated device for playing games. And that just means, fuck it, we got to get better at designs. And I want us to be exploring some of that stuff in the design lab and on our Discord. I have a professional dynamic with execs kept saying needs to be dynamic. Yeah, exactly. It needs to be good. It needs to be exciting. It needs to be dynamic. I was like, no, what are we actually trying to do here? That's why emotional goals, those are a lot more concrete than dynamic or, it's like thrilling. It's like try to be specific and intentional in how you're defining these things. We want the game to be fun. Well, of course you want it to be fun. Do you think it's better to make a game with love or making a game trendy that probably could sell more without love? Oh, make a game with love. Absolutely. Make a game with love. The secret ingredient is love. I know, like, even some good restaurants, and that's like, hey, it's just so cheesy, but one of my favorite restaurants, like, that's their secret ingredient. You go in there and it's clear the chefs really care about your food and your experience. They come up and they check on you. They make sure everything's just perfect. They're really happy to see you. They know your name. It's great. I even had a discussion about this with a local business owner about, like, the skills we're teaching here and, like, what those opening assignments were about. It's about that empathy. It's about caring for the customer. It's about caring for what you make. And that shows up in all different industries. If you don't care, it shows up, and then your customer doesn't care. And then they don't spend money, and you go out of business. It sucks. El Nivelador.
Terribly sorry, Matt, but duty calls and I must away.
All right. You're a busy man. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure, and I will see you all next week. Looking forward to your assignments.
Later. All right.
Take care.
A few more questions. I think we got to wrap this up. Question about the genre war game. Does that include games like Call of Duty, or is that only Call of Duty would be a first-person action game. War game, you'd be thinking more about like a strategy game or a game that is simulating the tactics of warfare, but there is some nuance and play in how you want to interpret that. Where do you link your homework after completing it? Okay, the submission box in the form is missing. That was a typo on my part. I'm going to get that fixed. Oh, hidden object game. So question about what is a hidden object game? Hidden object game is a really interesting genre. It's predominantly on mobile. Also a predominantly female-driven genre. Mostly women play hidden object games. It's a type of puzzle game where you have a wide kind of play field that's very visually complex, and you're trying to find specific points of interest within that play field. So you can do that as like a elaborate 2D painting, or you could do it as a 3D interactive environment. It's kind of like a treasure hunt. So like a narrative heavy treasure hunt. It's a neat genre. Okay. June's Journey. Yes, June's Journey is a good example of a hidden object game. Okay. On Steam or 100 Cats In series. Okay. All right. Any final questions? Elizabeth.
I do, but it's all about your experiences if you really don't
Oh
mind.
no, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We're in the kind of the ending part of the class, so we can be a little bit more open on the questions. What would you like to know?
So I have a loved one who really, really loves Max Payne 3. It helped him through a really rough time.
Cool.
And I know some people who have mixed views on Max Payne 3, but I want to know from your perspective of how you felt about it, or if you have any interesting stories about it.
Oh man, I have so many Max Payne 3 stories. That was my very first game as a designer. Got thrown in the deep end. And like that was the thing, like, man, starting off in the industry, like it was actually Michael's signing off. Catch you later, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, class. Bye.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey.
But yeah, Max Payne 3, that was my first game. I said, went into the deep end, had to struggle there a little bit. I'd worked really hard to get myself operating at kind of the level of quality that Rockstar was looking for. Taught me a lot, which was great. Let me think. Couple good stories about Max Payne 3 and my thoughts on it. Actually, one of the things I really liked about working on Max Payne 3 is I transitioned there from Electronic Arts. So from EA to Rockstar. EA, things were very driven by metrics and measurements.
Okay.
When I got to Rockstar, it was entirely about experience. If I had finished my tasks, but the game wasn't fun, my job wasn't finished, which I thought was great. And that was one of the things I really liked about working at Rockstar. Is like, man, like, it doesn't matter what you do. Is it fun? Are the players going to enjoy it? Which is like one of the reasons I think they're so freaking successful and they do a lot of really smart things. Oh, Max Payne 3. My thoughts on it as a game, I think it's got some amazing production values. I'm very proud of it. It's a game I enjoy playing. I think it is held back by a design decision that I think made sense when it was being made, but proved to be a problematic one. So Max Payne 3, cinematic third-person action game, there was a problem with players spending too much time in cover. To fix that, the design approach taken was players take double damage in cover, which gets them out of cover, but it also doesn't make any sense to the player. It's what I'd refer to as an opaque mechanic. It is not clear why it would take double damage or increase damage in cover. If anything, you think it would be the opposite of that.
Right.
My design perspective on it now is I think a better approach would have been to modify AI to try to flank the players to force them out of cover. Problem with that is you need to adjust your camera to allow for better lateral awareness of the player. You can also do stuff with threat indicators to let players know, okay, you're getting shot at by off camera, but those bullets just keep missing you for some reason, but they sure are getting closer to where you are. You better move. You know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about getting headshot quite a bit on a hardest difficulty.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the thing as well is also after a lot of the cutscenes, we push you into cover. So we're reinforcing the player you want to be in cover because we keep putting you in cover. But I think honestly, for a third-person action game, it's an excellent game. I'm super proud of it. I put so much work into that game, and I'm really, really proud of it. Like, it's great. So many little details in the levels I worked on. Probably stuff these people still haven't found. Little hidden Easter eggs and stuff I snuck in. Nothing risque. Just honestly, things to improve agency. Of like we see playtesters and players will be trying to shoot a specific thing or interact with something on a wall, and I'm like, I'm gonna make that actually do something. I'll stay up late and get that working.
What would you say is your favorite Easter egg to put in then?
Oh, in the yacht level, you can turn the showers on and off. There's 2 showers towards the end, and in a playtest, someone's like, I think I should be able to interact with the showers. And I'm like, oh, okay. I found a shower-like water spray effect, and just attached the particle emitters to the showers and attached it to a simple scriptable object. You just flip them on and off. I don't know if anyone's ever figured that out because it comes really late in the game, and by that point we've established you can't interact with the environment, but it's there. I put little hidden guns around, so if you're sneaky, you can find little guns that are against the standard allotment for a level. That was also kind of a bad thing because it increased our memory budget. But I loved having that little extra thing for players to find. And they're like, oh, now I get to use this gun for the rest of the level. That's neat. And I was careful to make sure they weren't pulling in animation libraries that were beyond what we had allocated, but there was additional budget cost there. But that's great. I'm like, another thing is I scrubbed every single checkpoint I could to make sure it absolutely respected your play decisions. So if you dropped a weapon or you didn't pick up specific items or you killed enemies in specific locations, they put in a whole bunch of data systems that would be like, oh, you can go back there and you still see that guy hanging over a railing, or you still see that one pill container that you missed. Didn't get it for every checkpoint, but I spent a lot of late nights getting that kind of stuff in there.
That's cool.
Though, sorry, one more Max Payne 3 story is I worked on the nightclub level, and the opening of the nightclub level. And we had a character, we had an 8 NPC character limit. And I got a brief for the opening of the nightclub where Max is in a crowded nightclub and the gangsters come in, they shoot up the place, and everyone runs out of the nightclub. And I was told we want to have that in real time, and we need a system that supports 360 characters. And originally we had 8. So that was a lot of magic from the tech team. Eventually we figured out we didn't have these weren't characters, they were a type of animated prop that was actually several, they weren't individuals. It was one prop that had several animated characters flailing around in it. And when we very carefully turned on and off collision and that kind of stuff, and months and months of work, finally get it to operate. And I'm heading home, and someone comes in and says, hey, the opening of the nightclub causes a hang on the PlayStation 3. Because it has less memory. Got it working on the Xbox 360 just fine, and then it was the PS3, and we had to pull out all the stops to get on the Xbox 360, and the PS3, that hang took about a month and a half to figure out. It was just yeah. The final solution, how we ultimately solved it, was we realized some of our characters that were being included in real-time cutscenes were assuming they were loading in the cinematic version of the characters, which makes sense. You're running a cinematic, you load in the cinematic versions, which are very high fidelity characters, but some of these characters were way in the background. So even though they were showing a low LOD version, they were still pulling in the assets of the full LOD version. So we're like, all right. So we made up a concept of a background cinematic character. And we just say, hey, for this character, they only get to load in these verified LOD levels. So the characters, you would see them up close in one environment during a cutscene, another cutscene, but now they're off in the background. That background version only is a low LOD version, and we flush out the high fidelity version, and that gave us a ton more memory. It was kind of hilarious. So when we figured that out, I was like, oh man, if we had just done that from the start, this would have been so much easier to do. We would have had so much more memory to play with. But, part of the process. But yeah, that was a month and a half on, that one hang. And
on that one bit.
yeah. And that was it just took forever for us to finally kind of have that little aha moment. When we did, yeah, it's blindingly obvious. But that's how a lot of these things go.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Just the Witcher 3 crows flying above. The LOD is so low. Yeah, because the player doesn't have to look for them. I have a lot of respect for games that very carefully hide their LODs or have aggressively low LOD characters. What level of AI is used in game design and Rockstar? Ooh, let me think about that. AI in Rockstar, it's very gameplay focused. So it's very much about what the AI is doing relative to player action. I guess that's the best way to describe it. So the thing is that kind of two types of agents in a lot of Rockstar, a lot of open world games. You have world agent AI, that's for like cars and pedestrians. And then you have mission agent AI, and that's much more scripted and much more directed. And man, having those two systems, man, they keep fighting each other. It could be a real problem. That was I remember having to script like early on in Max Payne 3, having to script world agents to act like mission agents, and like it was like herding cats because they respond to environmental stimuli. So like you'd break a window and suddenly the character would stop fighting you and run over to the broken window because that was the most recent stimulus. You're like, no, please just focus on the player. Please focus on the player. And then it's like, okay. Then our NPC AI system came on board. We could get rid of the world agent AI system. It was very funny though. All right, any other questions? Stanislav.
Yeah, I was also wondering, like in those big studios, how did you guys like manage to handle all the documentation, like the design documentation? Because I can imagine that there were a lot of like feature design documents, technical specifications documents.
Oh.
Like how was it all classified together? Like in my small professional practice, even in an indie studio, like we had a lot of those documents, and it was very easy to get lost into. Like we constantly like restructured everything, and
Yeah.
still people could not find documentation.
A surprisingly small amount of documentation. I found in a lot of the most successful projects I've been on, you'd be surprised at how little documentation there is on those things. But to augment that, people are constantly in communication with each other. The team is constantly talking about the game. And that kind of keeps everyone aware of what they're doing and what's happening. Also, just-in-time documentation. So documenting stuff directly at the asset level of like, I'm working in some source code. Here I'm explaining why I made these decisions and why this thing works and what our objectives are. Or attached to this level layout or in this blueprint, you're saying, hey, this is done this way for these reasons. And this is our overall objectives. This thing's currently a hack. These are our current to-dos. And so instead of me like looking at something, trying to dig up a document, look at that, see what that is, the two things start to get out of date. You just find the documentation with the thing you're currently working at. And then like just, constant communication. That's even small projects I'm on right now, that's what we facilitate is we use a small amount of design documentation for for generating ideas and for rallying high-level goals, but the specific tasks and specific details are generally just occur in conversation, and it's been going fine so far. Because a lot of times you'll write something and you as an individual developer has a flawed view on the game because you only know what you know. So me only knowing what I know, I'm trying to write this very large, complex thing that as soon as I write it will be out of date. And then I'm referencing people to a document that's out of date. They look at that, they start making mistakes. They have to talk to people anyways. It just becomes confusing. So now it's just like, hey, document saying, these are our goals, these are our objectives, our emotional, philosophical goals. And then here's the people you should be talking to if you've got any questions about what's happening currently on the project. And this is where you find your tasks and our overall goals for the week, et cetera, et cetera. And that's been working pretty well. But yeah, it's you'd be surprised at the small amount of documentation on functional gameplay projects.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you prefer Confluence, Google Docs, or a different tool for keeping the design documentation? I prefer Google Docs just because it's a standard and it works for a lot of stuff. For writing, I kind of prefer Confluence, but generally I find Confluence just fights a lot of other tools, so we just generally just gravitate towards Google Docs now. Miro is a really good one as well, like for a whiteboarding tool. I wish Google had a better whiteboarding tool, just so I could just use that one. And also Trello for tasks has been really good. Documentation outdates quickly. Yes, it does. Could you provide us with an example GDD template? I will be providing you with a GDD template later on. That is a non-standard one. I could not give you a proper GDD template, in my opinion, a lot of GDDs are now as a format that's very outdated, and I see a lot of companies now not using a centralized GDD aside from just very high level. Same thing. It's like you write down all those details when you know very little about the development of the game, then the game instantly has to pivot. But you have this document that keeps trying to pull it back to this thing you wrote at your maximum level of ignorance. It's one of the reasons why you've got so many games that go like over budget and drag on and miss deadlines. It's because you're constantly trying to correct for a version of the game that you made when you knew almost nothing about the reality of making this game. Do you have example template for the high level gameplay feature document? I'm going to be detailing that later on as part of some of the work we're doing with the FDI Labs initiative. There's a new development format I'm trying with some indie studios right now. We've had a lot of success with. I want to start farming that out to you guys as well. Get you guys to try it. So far, it uses a lot of these new high-level kind of GDD documentation formats, combined with regular playtesting, clear creative goals, that kind of stuff. And we've been surprised at how quickly things come into focus, how much fun the developers are having, and how much fun and how quickly games start becoming fun. Because you're constantly checking in with your player, and you know what game you're making, and it just kind of works. I heard art Bibles are outdated nowadays. How would I approach art design level choices instead? Level design and environment art are very different. As a level designer, you generally don't want to be thinking about the aesthetics. You want to be thinking about the player journey through the level. The spatial tools and resources is what I refer to it as. Usually I just think it's like, as a level designer, it's good to talk with the art team to get an understanding of what the space will be physically. So like you'll have this abstract concept and the artist will be like, well, that has to be an actual space. The player's in a warehouse at this point of the story, so we need it to look somewhat like a warehouse. And then like you'll probably come up with something that's more abstract than the designer, than the level environment artist wants. The environment artist will have something that's more bespoke than what you want, and you both compromise, and that's where quality comes from. Quality comes from good compromises and discussions. Ideas in the beginning. Figma users need some love too. Figma. I have not been using Figma much. I really got to explore Figma more. Level for art decision. Okay, so this here. Oh no, I didn't meant for level design. I just meant level design choices for art decisions. I think that's best handled by having a regular discussion with your artist. Like there's one project I was working on that was a lot of fun. It was just like be late at night. I'd be doing level design and have one of the lead artists. We'd just be chatting on Slack back and forth. I'd send screenshots. They'd do paint over, send it back. I'd modify it, send another screenshot over. It's like, all right, what if we did it like this? And like, okay, that makes sense. Now that becomes a waterfall. That'll be a pool. Then you have these islands over there, et cetera, et cetera. And eventually we just kind of zeroed it in. And I was just doing stuff with gray boxes and they would just paint over it. And it worked great. All right. Okay, guys, we're an hour over, so I think we got to wrap this up. But pleasure as always. I'm going to fix that Google form as soon as the end of the call, and I will catch you guys next week. Again, any feedback, mattf@freemandesign.institute. All right.
Bye.
Everyone have a good one. Looking forward to seeing what you come up with. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Matt. Peace.